absorb this song as we move into our service.
We come into your presence, peaceful Spirit. May we and God be one. We come into your presence, restful Father. We come into your presence, coming Son. We come into your presence, peaceful Spirit. May we and God be We come into your presence, restful Father. We come into your presence, coming Son. We come into your presence, peaceful Spirit. May we and God be one.
We come into the presence tonight, letting the outside world drop away for this hour as we move into this conversation on imagination and zeal and power. And we welcome the insights and the revelations that come for this open conversation. And we just simply say, thank you, God, for this opportunity. Amen. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Reverend Donna.
Thank you, Reverend Deborah. Nice to be here. Nice to see you all here. We have I have jokingly called this, the 12 amorphous intangibles, because that's what it feels like to try to grasp some of these concepts that are known as the 12 powers. And these three that are lined up for this evening are fascinating, with imagination, power, and zeal. And those did not come about accidentally. Those three are together for a reason.
Well, in the 12 powers of man, the powers are in a different order. Linda Martello, Reverend Linda, when she wrote her book, she put the powers in the order in which they appear in the body, which is that diagram that you have. And so they come together differently. And I thought it's much more interesting to do it that way. Donna wrote me this afternoon. She says, "What are the three again?" And I send her, what did I send you? I sent imagination, zeal, and love. And then later I'm going, I just sent a text, not love, power.
Well, that changed everything I was going to say tonight. Not love,
So
power.
it's like how these energies are, where the energies are generated or where they're active in our bodies. And that doesn't mean they're just stuck there, but it kind of helps to be able to go to a place to locate it somewhere, because otherwise it's amorphous.
It's amorphous. We don't want that. Although everything's amorphous, really.
that's true.
Metaphysically, everything's
Yeah.
amorphous. Which one should we do first? Power, imagination, or zeal?
I imagine we can start wherever we want.
Imagine we can. Okay, let's start with imagination. So imagination, as I was examining this to share with all of you this evening, is based on positive thoughts. I mean, we can imagine things that are negative thoughts. We can imagine negativity. We can imagine negative events or worry about them. But imagination gives us such an opportunity to have positive thoughts. And I also, when I think of imagination, I think of Sesame Street. I think of the people who put together the Children's Television Workshop to begin with, what they had to imagine. We're going to have all these little furry monsters telling kids how they should be in the world. Really? But they had that concept and used their imaginations to come up with the characters and the puppets. They are puppets, right? And sometimes I forget that they're puppets. Sometimes they seem so real. And the lessons that are learned, so much imagination went into that. And so much imagination when we watch that. Because I still watch Sesame Street. I admit it. I love that. I watch that show, and I do forget that they're puppets. I do forget that there's someone underneath there or behind there. My imagination lets me relate to Elmo in a way that, he's just the kid down the street. And I want that imagination as part of me. So imagination, my first reaction to it is freedom and growth and possibility.
And I was just going to say freedom, because you can go anywhere and you can imagine anything. And of course, yes, we are capable of imagining the worst. We can go there. But when you use your imagination as part of one of the ways that we, using our imagination in a positive way is how we change our thinking. How we, it's like, okay, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go drive today, and the roads are going to be packed, and it's going to be da-da-da. But if you imagine a free-flowing, I'm just getting on the freeway and I'm just getting where I'm going, it's amazing what will happen when you imagine that kind of situation. It's one of the ways that we change our thinking.
Imagination is also invited but not forced. I didn't make that up, I read it somewhere. But I love that. It's invited. We open ourselves to imagination. We open ourselves. But when we sit down and say, okay, I'm going to be really imaginative and creative right now, it doesn't work quite the same way as when we're just open and allow it to happen.
Well, yeah, because the minute you start trying to make it be something, you shut off all of the faucets turn off. Yeah. And it's like, I think probably one of the best terms for imagination is what if. Mm-hmm. What if?
I gave a whole talk one time about what if. That
Really?
was the theme of the whole talk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, and that what if was used in an old Hewlett-Packard series of commercials. And I don't know if you remember that. It was like 20 years ago. There was this whole series of TV commercials from Hewlett-Packard. What if? And they were saying things like, what if someday you could talk to people through a screen on your computer? The things that they were saying, what if, about 20 years ago are now part of our lives and we don't think anything of it. But it took all those brilliant people to say, what if, to make it happen. If they can say what if to a bunch of technology and make that happen, just imagine what our possibilities are for everyday life.
And I was thinking about this somehow this goes through my head every time I talk about imagination, is it's like, you've suggested something to someone and they'll go, no, and you go, you have no imagination. But the truth is we all have, there's no one who has no imagination. So I think some people might be more free with their ideas, and of course, I think we also think sometimes of imagination as crazy ideas. However you label that. I mean, it's like, and of course, the crazier the idea, the better.
Sometimes.
Well, you don't have to act out every crazy imagination, but if you don't allow yourself to get, crazy ideas. In fact, there's a notebook out there somewhere that you can buy. It says crazy ideas on it. It's a journal. And because what might be a crazy idea to you might be a perfectly practical, or what might be an interesting one to you might be a crazy idea to someone else. My sister thought 90% of my ideas were crazy. Yet here I am. Pardon?
Still
crazy after all these years.
Still crazy. Speaking of imagination, you recently had hip surgery, like a week ago.
Let's see.
8 days ago?
It was on a Monday, so that's the 8, 9, this is day 10.
Week and 2 days, okay. How much did imagination come into play in your healing?
I guess, and I had the right hip replaced in May, and I don't know if I imagined healing quickly so much as it never occurred to me that I wouldn't. It never occurred to me that there would be a problem. It never occurred to me that I wouldn't heal quickly. It never occurred to me, not that I was in denial and didn't know those things could happen. It simply didn't occur to me that was going to be in this situation. So I guess on some level, and I've been doing this a long time, so I'm not always as conscious of working it as people who are learning to do it now. But I saw myself healing, moving forward. In May, I had the surgery on a Monday, and we had the annual meeting was that Sunday. I did not come to service, but someone brought me over so I could be in the annual meeting. And people are like, well, what? And it's like, well, I need to be here. And the Sunday, I couldn't have missed that service for anything. And yeah, I was tired when I went home. But, and the other part is people will say, well, you're doing too much. No, I did yesterday. But for the most part, this is the only thing I'm doing today. And I've got one thing I'm going to do tomorrow. And so but I expect my body to heal. In my mind, in my imagination, this miraculous mechanism that I'm walking around in knows how to heal itself. And so what I have to do is support it. And one of the ways to do that is keeping my thoughts in the right place. So I guess you can call that imagination. I imagine that I'm going to be just ducky fine.
And so it is.
And so it is.
So one of the definitions of imagination that I found in researching all of this from the Fillmore perspective is that imagination allows us to see beyond what eyes can see. To see beyond what eyes can see. And again, it just opens up so much possibility. The figure, the statistic, whatever it is that we use, 6% of our brains? Some ridiculously small amount of what our real mental capacity is. Imagination could take us into so much more depth than we ever allow ourselves. And it makes me wonder why some people hold back. You're right, everybody has imagination. It's a matter of how we use it. But why do some people hold back on that when the possibilities are endless? I don't really want an answer to why. It's one of those questions.
Well, but I do actually have an answer for that, and that is so much of this is beaten out, not beaten physically, but beaten out of us as kids. It's like I was allowed to color Santa Claus any color I wanted, but I know, and so I would color Santa Claus green or blue or whatever, but there are people who were taught you cannot color him anything but his clothes, anything but red, because that's what Santa Claus is. And when you're taught that from the time you're this big, then your ability to And some people transcend that and kind of naturally by their personality. But when you know, we come into this world wide open, and then people just start, you know, squeezing in on us. And some of us are just, you know, I mean, no one could have ever stopped me, and I don't think you either. But there are people, you know, and so, but we're all built differently. And when, you know, I do guided meditations, and I have people say I can't really follow a guided meditation. I get lost, or I don't. There are people who do not see images in their pictures in their mind, and that's normal. There's nothing wrong with them. And I tell them just go with the energy. And I realized the other day I need to tell people when I'm listening to somebody else's guided meditation, I don't follow it. I just go out there and get in the space, and I do whatever. I very rarely follow exactly what the guided meditation is telling me, because that's not really what it's for. It's to get you into the space. Open up your imagination. Open up how to see differently. And maybe that's what imagination really is to see differently, seeing beyond appearances.
You were talking about what color Santa Claus outfit is. There is so much with kids that is taken away. You know, when they're 3 and 4 years old and they're imitating dogs and they're doing all those things that little kids do, and then by the time they're 7, that's gone. Why is that gone? Because we told them that Santa Claus only wears red. Because we've talked them out of their imaginations. And some of that is okay to the extent that we do want children to follow a certain path and know certain things and understand where the lines in coloring and in life are. But we take so much away from them in that process. I wonder how we can ever achieve letting them have both.
And again, I mean, there are the people who grew up in families where they were encouraged to be just open and think, and then others, it's like I remember forever, my brother was always telling me to act my age. And thank God I never figured out what the heck that was. I have no idea what acting your age meant. And that was a good thing, because I would probably be sitting here in pearls and high heels and yeah, I know, right?
Ew. I just had a friend last week say, it's okay if you retire, but please don't ever grow up. So I think we all have that,
right.
A little bit of that. Hopefully,
Yeah.
A lot of us have that little bit of kid
Yeah.
that's still in there. Are there people who come to mind when you think of imagination? Are there names of people who come to mind? Who, you know, I was talking about Jim Henson and all of the children's television
one of the first
workshop
ones
people.
is Jim Henson, and there's another, and I have no idea who these people are, but I've been blown away. There was is it the Kennedy Center where they honor people, and they were honoring Led Zeppelin, and I am not necessarily a Led Zeppelin fan.
No, but that was an exceptional show, and I'm not a Led Zeppelin fan either, but there was something about that show that really stands out to people
Well,
as a
Heart
production.
came on, and they did Stairway to Heaven. Now,
It was Heart.
It was
Heart.
It was Heart, yeah, and they did Stairway to Heaven, and it was spectacular. It was a huge thing. They had a choir behind them. You know, John Bonham's, is that his son?
His
You know,
son.
his son was the drummer. I mean, it was spectacular. So I watch it every once in a while because it's so amazing. But here's the deal. Is that I came across an interview that Ann and the sisters
Ann
did,
and Nancy.
Hart did, and it was saying, you know, about the rehearsals and all of that. Turns out that she said everybody was doing this, you know, as a favor. It wasn't a paid gig, and they were invited to do it. And he says something about the production, and they said they had nothing to do with that whole production. They came in and they rehearsed with the band one time, and then when they came in the day of the actual performance and they were going on, the one who plays the guitar, she said her fingers were so cold she could barely use them. And somebody said, well, we'll just get this other guy to do the intro. And she said, no, they'll know that it's not me. She somehow pulled it out and did so they walked in to this massive production where they would have had no time to really connect with anybody else and go up there and do this amazing performance. And the imagination that the people who put the whole thing together and then have the confidence that all these people could come together in such a short period of time and pull it off. If you should, I mean, it's on YouTube, and if you haven't seen it, even if you're not a Led Zeppelin, what they do with that song is just. But the whole thing was someone imagined, how can we do this? How can we honor, the drummer? How can we honor Led Zeppelin? What can we do to make this song even more spectacular? And I sit there and I think about what all must have gone into that and who came up with those ideas, And whenever I watch that, I think there's some people walking around who are barely functioning in this world because there's so much out there doing. And they say a lot of artists are crazy. Well, there's a reason, because they're so busy in the imaginary world, and then the act of bringing it into manifestation.
I also am not a Led Zeppelin fan, but there are lyrics. And as we wind on down the road, our shadows longer than our souls. What kind of imagination comes up with that concept and that picture and can put words to it? Same song, but just a different aspect of the imagination that went into all of that.
And so it's, I guess imagination is where we start to bring, we start, that's our starting point, and then we bring it, there's the thought, then there's the idea, and then there's the imagination, and then there's the manifestation. Yeah. It goes through all of those different things to bring it into, someone imagined this place. They did not imagine that they would be here doing services. This was supposed to be simply the offices. But, so imagination brings everything into being.
I imagine that about an hour after this session is over, Deborah's going to be texting me and saying, did we really spend 10 minutes talking about Led Zeppelin?
I probably won't, because I'm not surprised. Because I just recently watched it again, and it was after I saw the interview with them saying that they just essentially walked in, rehearsed once, went away, got their fingers frozen, came back and played it. And I've seen this happen here on this platform. I've seen people come in and maybe rehearse once, and I think it was one of our cabarets or something. We had some spectacular thing happen, and they had rehearsed one time. And part of that is the magic of music. Yeah. There's something about those of you who are musicians, it's like you get into the groove of, it's like you go into the world of, you go into the music, you just become the music, and it flows. And so, and I think we have to practice everything a million times before we can get it right. So that's the other part of that perfection thing.
It is absolutely magical when musicians do that. I'm also not a musician, so I look at that with absolute wonder. But I think the same thing happens with Shakespearean actors. Any combination of them could walk onto the stage and have that magic happen. And it probably happens with engineers and mathematicians too, but I don't speak that language at all, so I would never witness that. But I think that same kind of magic happens. In fact, there were a couple of scientists on my list when I tried to think of who are the imagination people. Madame Curie came to mind because she had to use her imagination to do the work that she did as a scientist. Katherine Johnson came to mind, the mathematician from NASA who lived to be 100 years old or whatever. Just amazing brains, amazing minds, but even in the realm of science, the amount of imagination that goes into those possibilities. They have to see beyond what the eye can see in order to do their work.
And you know who could do that was Helen Keller.
Absolutely.
She was cut off from what we consider the sensory world, and yet she did amazing, miraculous things. And so, yeah. Then the thing is that as we're talking about this, and we were sort of wondering how these three went together, the truth is that if your imagination is where it is, that's where you then use your power and your enthusiasm or zeal to bring it into manifestation.
So let's just manifest ourselves right over to zeal. What do you say?
Okay.
All right. So zeal, there's so much passion behind zeal. There's so much, there's just so much desire in it. There's so much intention in it. I looked up zealot in preparation for this evening because there are all the biblical passages about the zealots. And I thought they were religious zealots, and perhaps they were. But there was also a political movement of zealots right around the time that Jesus walked the earth, and maybe 100 years after that. They were a political group who did not want the Roman Empire to be in the region where they lived that we now call the Holy Land. So that was sort of zealot with sort of a capital Z of its time, a political movement rather than a spiritual movement. I thought that was interesting. Maybe you knew it. I just found out. Thought I'd share it with you. Fun facts to know and tell.
And this was, and this just goes along with zeal, enthusiasm, and whenever you think of someone being a zealot, you think that they're like over the top. They're, I mean, that's the, right? Is that a zealot? Is there? And so I have The 12 Powers of Man, which is by Charles Fillmore, and so we have the language of the 1920s or whenever he was writing. So, but he says about this, he says, take time to be holy. Turn a portion of your zeal to do God's will to the establishing of his kingdom within you. Do not put all your enthusiasm into teaching, preaching, healing, and helping others. Help yourself.
Oh, so it's like the thing on the airplane where you have to put your mask on before you help the person next to you. It's like that. Help yourself.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. You can't really do anything for anyone else if you're not in good shape yourself.
Well, I was telling you earlier that I have gotten lots of comments about how fast I'm healing from this, and my being out so soon and everything. And what finally came out of my mouth on Sunday is, I have to take credit for this, but I've been doing this for over 50 years. And honestly, I'm at the point now that if I can't find a way to motor through this without becoming a, oh my God, victim, I have no business teaching it. That's where I have finally come. And that doesn't mean that somewhere along the way something's going to happen that I can't just fix. And I haven't just fixed this overnight either, but I'm probably usually, last time they told me I was 2 weeks ahead of what they would expect, and I expect I'll hear that tomorrow again. But I'm spending the time, I'm spending the meditation time, I'm spending the energy work, I'm doing the process. And which means I'm standing in my power as a human being who all of my inner power, I'm using my inner power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's also a definition of zeal that I heard that is the urge to move forward. And I thought it was interesting that the word urge was used, the urge to move forward, because that sounds so immediate, so urgent, so right now. And it's also an internal motivator. An urge is an internal motivation to do something. And I can see you're disagreeing with me. No?
No, actually, that's really interesting because when I was introduced to the 12 Powers when I was 25, and so anything underlined in here was underlined in the 70s, and I had a little trouble. In fact, for a long time, I had trouble with zeal. The word just, I don't know. But the truth is that my enthusiasm for healing my body and getting back to work, because I'm just going to sit there going, otherwise, I don't want to stop what I'm doing, and I also don't want to abuse my body, but I guess my enthusiasm or my zeal for healing is strong enough that that's one of the things that has kept me moving forward.
Enthusiasm is right here on the page in front of me. How about that?
All right.
It also says opposite of pointless. Zeal is the opposite of pointless. Again, Google, is my friend. I didn't make that up. But what a great definition. Zeal is the opposite of pointless. It also struck me, because I'm the person who always teaches about finding purpose in life, and that's my passion project. Purpose is so tightly related to zeal, maybe more than any of the other powers. It just seems like having a zeal for life, having that motivation, having that spiritual enthusiasm gets you closer to working in your purpose than anything else I can think of. If you don't have zeal, you can have purpose, but you might not be acting on it. You might not be living in it to the fullest.
And I know people who feel like they don't have a purpose or they don't. I'm trying to think of how to describe this. I was in a group once, and we were talking about, that whole thing of find your, all of the self-help books, find your passion and go after it, follow your heart. And of course, they don't tell you how to actually find that. This woman tells you how to find it. But it's like, and this woman said, I don't have a passion. And I said, well, maybe passion isn't the word, is that maybe there's just something about you that you feel an impulse or a compulsion to do. This person actually works with elderly people. She, geriatric, she's got training in that. She loves to help people, but she's never considered it a passion. It's just what she does. And I think sometimes we get into the idea of my passion is this thing. I've got this set up in the garage, and I go do my passion for a while, and then I go back out into the real world, and then I go back and do my passion, which really, they shouldn't be a separate thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you teach.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting thing happened too. Usually transformation, finding a path to purpose, is a 6-week class. Usually. But in 2024, I spent a whole year with the same group of people. The same class decided that they wanted more and wanted more and wanted more. So we spent the whole year together. I had never taught it or led the group in such a long effort like that. And the moment when they had lists like, oh, I know what my purpose is. I want to work with people who are on the spectrum. I want to feed people at the food bank. I want to help animals who are in crisis. They were coming up with all these things, and what they were working with was a long list of things they wanted to do. But what got to them, where the zeal came in and the purpose really kicked in, was the last election. Because even though they were of various political stripes, even though they had different political views within the room, that last election was a motivation for them to say, wait, no, I feel passionate about this or this or this, and that's what I'm going to get out to do. So the first 9 to 11 months was sort of a setup of what they might do to find their purpose. And then there was something that happened that just pushed them in a certain direction. And the last 2 months was when they really got it done. And we're having another session in about a week and a half where they're going to get up and give some of their testimonials, and the things that they're coming up with that they've done since the election in November are just absolutely magical, purposeful, amazing, and filled with zeal. They just needed that push. So it might be an election that pushes you. It might be something that happens in your family. It might be something about health. It might be something about who knows what it could be. But zeal sometimes comes when you least expect it. No matter what's already processing in your head, it's the thing that can push you off the edge of the pool and into the water when you really get things done.
And at the same time, you can, there's the possibility of not allowing yourself to engage in that zeal. I had a conversation with someone after church one Sunday, the two of us sitting right there, and I don't know what we were talking about, but the question was, they were questioning what they should be doing. And this person likes to help people, but he said, if somebody comes and asks me to help them move, and I don't really want to do it. But they asked me if I want to. He doesn't play music, but I can't remember what his other thing was. But he said, but I'm really good at that, and I love doing that, and I would much rather do that. And he was feeling a little guilty that he didn't want to do the other thing. And and so I started talking about the whole idea of working to your genius. It's okay to work. I mean, his zeal, his enthusiasm was here. Why would he dampen that down to go do this thing that he really didn't want to do? But he was having trouble giving himself permission to follow his zeal. Mm-hmm. And so, it was really a good conversation, and whatever came out of it, he was like, oh yeah, it's okay. It's okay that I don't like to help people move, and especially after a certain age, no one wants to go out and with the pickup and do the movie thing. Where after you're 25, you don't want to do that anymore. But it was this. Maybe some of what dampens our zeal is all of our shoulds, ought tos, have tos. Mm-hmm. What are other people going to think? Because I do think that real zeal transcends what other people are going to think.
We've got a case there, too, where imagination and zeal work together. If he was closed off to that, using his imagination in a different way could open that door.
Yeah. He wasn't, fortunately, he wasn't like really stuck, but he was just kind of working with that. And of course, Walt Disney comes to mind because everybody kept telling Walt Disney none of this stuff would work ever. Yeah, it was always just no, and he's going, uh-huh.
He was right.
He was right.
He was right. Yeah.
So
now we have power.
We do.
And I brought up a couple of weeks ago a question that a friend of mine has. A friend of mine who was raised in a very hardcore Southern evangelical environment, but she hangs out with a lot of and that's not her path anymore. But that was her upbringing. She hangs out with a lot of people who are in New Thought. And so she's very familiar with the 12 powers of man. And she has repeatedly said, why is power one of the powers? There are the 12 powers. Why aren't there 12 powers? Why is power one of the powers? And I found it to be a reasonable question. I'm not sure that we have a reasonable, solid answer. But there must be some reason why power is on this list.
Well, power is the inner strength. Well, it's not. See, the thing is all of these aspects really come back to the same thing as the one presence that is within all of us. But how power works is, to me, it's that ability. It's not strength. It's the power. It's the energy. It's the energy behind zeal. It's the energy behind, and we talk about inner power and external power. So external power is about control, getting your own way, bossing people around, all of that. Internal power, the power from within, is standing in your own light and in your own joy, in your own self. That's what the power is standing in your own light.
So we don't have it, we channel it.
Well, we don't have any of these, we channel all of them. That's the thing, this is all vibration, it's all vibration. And so, we women in particular talk about, feeling powerless, giving up our power. And I think all human beings give up their power in one way or another. I don't know. Men are trained to do it in a different way than women are, but we're all trained to give up our personal power. My personal power is my ability to make decisions for myself, to stand in my truth, to be who I really am. And that takes courage because, especially those of us who grew up, it's coming back around again. But I remember in the 50s and 60s, I was always being told, well, you can't do that because you're a girl, and you can't do that because you're a girl. And it's like, okay. And trying to find your own personal power of who you are, your personality, You know, I grew up, my parents had a car and a pickup because my father owned a hardware store. And I learned to drive both, but at night, if I went out, I got to drive the pickup because my parents would use the family car to go out. So all the way through high school, junior, senior year, I'm driving a pickup. So when it's time for me to get a car, what do I say? I would like a pickup. And you know what I was told?
You can't have a pickup.
No.
You're a girl.
Girls don't drive pickups. Now, think about that phraseology. I've been driving a pickup for 2 years, and now I'm told girls don't drive pickups.
They told me girls couldn't have train sets. Guess what?
So when you are told that you cannot do something or something you're not supposed to do something, and then you find it within yourself to do that thing, not out of rebellion, but out of your inner power to be who you are, that's when you are standing in your own light, in your own selfhood.
Do you think power can be sought? Can we look for power? Or does it just sort of land on us?
Well, the inner power is there. It's a matter of us finding it. External power, I mean, I think...
but we're not talking about external power in
no.
this context. This
Right.
is internal power.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't. The only way you can find it is to ask. Is to look within, and what makes me feel strong. What makes me feel like who I'm who I am. What makes me feel like myself. Maybe that's it. What makes me feel like myself. And in that moment, I know exactly who I am. I think that, to me, that's the power.
Is resilience part of the power?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't think of any place else to put resilience. Well, maybe with strength, but yeah.
Resilience has a different.
This is Fillmore language.
Resilience, not resilience, but power is the same as dominion. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
On the right-hand side of the page. Different language depending on who said it. I found something interesting in. I get a lot of us do. We sign up for some daily message from some group or another. And I get a daily message from one of the Quaker organizations. And one day it said, power ultimately rests with the humble. So we think of power, but it ultimately rests with the humble, which is just a great Quaker philosophy.
Every once in a while, I'll come across something on the out there, and excuse me, on the web, whatever, Facebook, whatever, and there are these little videos where there's someone teaching people how to deal with a narcissist, and one of the things that they teach is that you simply don't feed. If they're, on you, trying to do their little whatever game they are, you just continually agree with them and you don't argue with them. And that's a way of humility. It is like, okay, fine. I'm not going to play your game. I'm just going to be who I am.
So there's a lot of surrender.
Yes, but not in the sense of giving up.
No,
Surrender in terms of
a spiritual surrender in
right,
power.
Yeah. And that is empowering, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Again, the same question I asked you about some of the other powers that we've discussed. Is there anyone who comes to mind with personal power, inner power?
I'm going to say Dolly Parton.
Oh.
She grew up, she's such an interesting person because she grew up in poverty. She's come up and she's, rich as all get out. She's talented as all get out. She makes fun of the way she looks because, but she doesn't stop because that is what makes her feel good about herself. And she doesn't let anybody tell her what to do. In fact, I think the reason it comes to mind is that recently she was talking about something, and I can't remember what song it was, that Elvis Presley wanted to record.
Yes.
And the deal is that if Elvis Presley recorded something, he got the rights to the song. And she had to be really young at the time, and she said, I'm not giving up the rights to my song, and so Elvis Presley cannot record my song.
That took a lot.
That, yeah.
But that is knowing your power.
Yeah.
That's a great example,
Yeah.
because just any conversation, any interview you ever hear with her, she does have that inner power.
Yeah.
She knows that. And I love, she always says, it takes a lot of money to look this cheap. There's a certain
Yeah.
self in that kind of a statement.
Yeah, and I think a lot of work to look at this. I mean, the thing is that she's just who she is, and I've heard that she'll sit down and write 2 or 3 songs in a day. So she's a channel, and maybe that's part of this too. Is that if we understand that we are channels, and of course channeling can get all kinds of weird connotations to it, but the truth is that we are all we are is vibration. And if we are tuned in enough, then that vibration comes through us. It's like this conversation is just coming through us right now. We barely chatted about this when we were in my office. We were chatting about all kinds of other things. Allowing, spirit, allowing the energies to just come in and sit in your own power, in your own space. And it's like, I just imagine that we're going to come up here and we're going to have a great conversation. That's what I imagine when we do this.
I would have said Eleanor Roosevelt. Because on the surface, she may not have seemed all that powerful, or you may not have recognized her inner power. But what she ended up doing as a political leader, she ended up getting this whole group of people, leaders from around the world, together in one room so that they could work on the International Bill of Rights, which is an amazing document in and of itself. If you ever want to Google that, do some research on the International Bill of Rights. Nobody else wanted to do this project. Somebody handed it to Mrs. Roosevelt to do. She collected all the world leaders, put them in one room, and said, we're going to get to work on this, and oh, by the way, you're not going home until we're done. And they listened to her, and they did it. That's something. That's an inner power that I think is amazing to have from someone who may not have even recognized it in herself at some points in her life.
I think some of the most powerful people are those who are simply being who they are. It's like Dolly Parton. They're not after anything. They're not trying to be anybody or be anything special. They're just doing what they do.
Yeah.
They are following their purpose. They're following their path, whatever you want to call that. They are simply putting one step in front of the other and doing their thing. And they're not worried about what everybody else is going to think. They're simply saying, if Walt Disney had worried about that, there'd probably be fewer amusement parks. But
fewer parks, oh no. And where would we be without Mickey Mouse?
That's true.
Right?
And that amazing animation, the animation today is so, but the work that, that's another place for imagination is when I watch, especially the older cartoons, the Disney cartoons and the Roadrunner and all of those. Can you imagine being in the room with those people coming up with those ideas? It must have been either really strange or really hilarious or really something.
Those were some staff meetings, weren't they?
Yeah.
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 Those would have been interesting.
Yeah.
So imagination, zeal, and power end up being intimately related, even though on the surface we may have questioned, how is that possible?
And the thing is all of these are really simply just different aspects of who we are or how we use our energies. I think that's this is and when we get into further, it's like, as we talk about this, and we'll even ask this, is there one that you relate to more than others? And there's one that I have a go-to power because it's the one I relate to the most, and it just, it works for me. I don't try to do all 12.
What is it?
Order, divine order.
Divine order.
Whenever anything's going on, divine order prevails in all ways at all times. And I use that more than anything else. because that's the ultimate surrender.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that. So we have a few minutes.
So we can do some questions here.
Yeah,
When I work at Mondavi Center, which I do several times a year, we take questions in the audience, and the chancellor at UC Davis always says, make sure that you ask your question in the form of a question. And I think that's just such a good, powerful way to do that. So I'll ask you to do that this evening. Ask your question in the form of a question. Patty, the illustrious Patty, has the microphone, and she will, if you raise your hand, take your question.
Although it is okay if you just have a comment to make, I think. Yeah. Wait.
Wait for the microphone.
The people on the live stream can't hear you unless you have the microphone. Thank you.
I was gonna say I have lots of comments, but no questions. So, yeah, I love that. When in Billings in Unity Church, in the beginning of the year, we use candles, the different colors, and people pick, what they're drawn to, what they want to focus on for the year, and it's really a powerful service. But yeah, what you were talking about, it hit home, a lot of it, and it's like, oh yeah. One of the things is I don't project myself to the world the way I am in my head. The person I am, this is getting to me right this minute. The person I feel I am, how I look and everything is completely different than what I project to the world. And the thing was like, I was told how I should think, how I should feel. It's like, you don't feel that way. And this is what you think. And so much control over me that when I finally got out, I just went crazy.
And that's that's not uncommon. That's not uncommon at all. So yeah.
But I'm very happy that I found unity, and I'm releasing all that stuff, and I'm becoming who I am. And like you said, your accident. I hit some black ice, and I rolled 3 times, broke my neck, and in the ICU, my minister said, "You're the most positive person in the room."
Yeah.
And the thing is I didn't see my body the way everybody else did.
Exactly.
And it wasn't even something that I had to plan. At the time, I was enmeshed in unity, and it was just there.
Yep.
You
so
know?
we did. Yeah. Okay.
And
We're running out of
sorry.
time. That's okay. So we're
And
running out
now
of time.
I've forgotten who I am, and this is manifesting.
But you know what? The thing is we never lose it, and it's easy to remember it. Yeah. And easy to remember it. Any other comments? Any other questions? Not a curious crowd. Okay. Okay. So next week, what are we doing next week? I don't even remember which ones. Oh, you know what? If we look up at the screen, we'll probably know. So let's go ahead. Cameron, can we have the next slide? Okay. I normally at this point we would be. Is there anybody here who's here with us for the first time tonight? Never been here before? I'm pretty sure we're all friends. Okay. And so this is also a DVD player, and so that's really cool.
Sometimes that little slideshow doesn't work exactly the way you think it's going to.
That's kind of.
We've welcomed you now for 5 minutes, isn't it?
And if the PowerPoint isn't going any further, that's okay. I can do the rest of. Oh, there we go. And so this is our opportunity to support Spiritual Life Center. And if you're watching us online, you can text SLC Love to 44321. You can go to our website and click on the donate button. And of course, you can always mail in a donation if you wish. And of course, please click on, subscribe, like, whatever all of those different things that the apps ask you to do, because that spreads this word. This is important information. This is important energy that we are sending out into the world right now, and this is the kind of energy the world needs right now. So please, please share it with as many people as you can. And so let us here in this, here now tonight, say our offering blessing together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Thank you.
Next week, I just happen to know this because I looked at the chart. So I happen to know that next week we will be talking about strength, love, and wisdom.
And that is going to be really interesting. So let us make our circle.
Let's make our circle down here.
I always like the amoeba that we get.
Use your imagination.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Donna, for joining me tonight. And let us take a nice deep breath. Let it go as we go back out into the world, and let's say our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of